Loops are statements that repeat other statements. Loops repeat an action, which is a set of one or more valid statements. There are two basic kinds of loops. There is a counted loop, which is when you repeat the action a specified number of times. So you know how many times you want to repeat the action. For example, I want to do this 10 times. And there are also conditional loops in which you know you're going to repeat an action, but ahead of time you don't know how many times you're going to repeat the action. So you just keep repeating the action until something happens. So the action of the loop is the set of statements that are repeated. So you have to have a way of specifying what the statements are in the action. So generally they're either bracketed in some way, so we put some kind of parentheses or curly braces or square brackets or something around them, or by indentation, just by indenting the statements in the action, or sometimes there's some kind of reserved words that indicate the beginning and the end of the action. Even if it's not required, indenting the statements in an action is a good idea because it makes them easier to see. So it just makes it a lot more obvious what the actual statements are in the action. So a general loop might look something like this. So we'll have a word, for example, repeat, that says we're going to repeat. So one way of bracketing the statements in the action would be in some kind of curly braces, for example. So we have a bunch of statements, and these are the statements in our action. So if we indent them like this, then it makes it easier to see these statements. So another way we might designate the action is with reserved words or keywords like repeat and end. So the action is anything in between those statements, and again we might indent them just to make it easier to see what the action is going to be. So again, there are two different kinds of loops. A counted loop is when you specify exactly how many times you're going to repeat the action. So for example, I might in an assignment statement assign the number 5 to a variable n, and then say I'm going to repeat n times whatever the action is. So I do this once, and then a second time, and then a third, and then a fourth, and a fifth. So you repeat all of the statements in the action, in this case 5 times. And that's what a counted loop is, when you know how many times you're going to repeat the action. A conditional loop, on the other hand, is repeat until something happens. So you repeat, you do the statements in the action, you do them once, you check, did something happen yet? If it didn't, then you execute the statements again, and then you check, did something happen yet? If it didn't, then you execute the statements again. So you keep repeating the action in the loop until something that you specify actually happens. So ahead of time, you don't know how many times you're going to repeat the action.